over time and over all these different translations, how do we make sure that what we have now is the same as 2,000 years ago? Or how do we make sure that nothing has been changed since then?
Great question, Ricardo. Because we have something called the bibliographical test. If I want to say how that document is authentic or not, if it's true or not, it's a science thing, okay? It's called the bibliographical test. Basically, let's talk just one aspect of it because this is a big thing. Okay. The manuscripts, okay? 2 questions basically we ask to see if this document is reliable or not. How many manuscripts we have, how far or how long, what's the time difference between the original and the copies or the first copy we have? Why? Because the more manuscripts you have, that tells me that the error in the original most probably will be less. And the many manuscripts you have, like the quantity of it, is very important because the closest to the original, it tells me that not much time was allowed to play in the original because right after I had a copy.
Right.
Okay? So before I tell you these numbers in terms of the Bible, let me tell you a few things and we compare it to the Bible, like few other documents. Okay? Very famous ones. Pliny the Elder, very famous document. How many manuscripts we have? 96 manuscripts. Caesar, we have 250 manuscripts. Plato, very important, 220 manuscripts, 220. The New Testament, these numbers were in hundreds, correct? 96, 250, 220. Do you know how many manuscripts just for the New Testament we have? Over 24,000.
Wow.
So it's not even comparable. Out of which we have like 5,838 in Greek, just for the New Testament. The Old Testament, or the whole Bible, let's say, we have over 66,000 manuscripts. So there's no comparison between the Bible and the amount of manuscripts and the number of manuscripts we have for the Old Testament and New Testament and comparing it to any other document we have. Now, how long, what's the time difference between the original and the manuscript? Let's talk about the same ones that I shared before. Pliny the Elder. The difference is 750 years between the original and the manuscript. Caesar, 950 years. Plato, 1,300 years. Let's talk about the Bible, the New Testament, 40. These were in the hundreds, 750 and 950, and the New Testament was written from the events we have around 40 years in difference. So that tells me that these people wrote the New Testament at their lifetime. It's not like someone told someone and told, the broken phone, right? So at the very, very end, we maybe heard that's because someone told me and someone else told them. And no. They were writing at their lifetime, the New Testament. And the difference is like 40 years. So there's no comparison, okay? I want to go a bit back as well. For example, what we call them, the Apostolic Fathers. Okay, because we believe that Mark was written, the first gospel was written around 65 to 70 AD. Matthew was written after that, around 80 AD. Luke after, around 85 AD. And then John was the latest. He wrote his gospel around 90 to 95 AD. Okay, after these guys, there were some, what we call them Apostolic Fathers, were disciples of Peter and John. For example, we have Clement of Rome. He was a disciple of Peter. Polycarp of Smyrna, he was a disciple of John. Ignatius of Antioch was a disciple of John as well. Another disciple of John was Papias. And I want to end with this, actually responding to your question. The people who were saying, but we didn't have the New Testament until almost the 4th century. Athanasius, around 300 something, he wrote a festal letter and he listed the 27 books of the New Testament. This is not true. This wasn't the first time that we have the New Testament and knowing the 27 books by the 4th century. Because before that, I will give you some names and their dates. First of all, that was that kind of fragment, what we call them the Muratorian fragment. It was in Latin, very, very small piece of a document showing, already listing 22 out of the 27 books. And that was like around 170 AD. So at the very, very beginning, right after John finishes his gospel, we have a document listing 22 out of the 27. And after that, we have Irenaeus, which is very, very important guy, around 150 AD, and he listed also 22 books. And he's the guy who opposed the heresies of the Gnostic heresies in his 5 books. Like the Gnosticism was denying the incarnation of Christ. That was a big deal at that time. And like salvation just only to the elite people by knowledge, is not by faith. So all of that. And then we had Clement of Alexandria. Then we had Origen of Alexandria. Origen of Alexandria, just by himself, around 200 AD, he was preaching, quoting some, like a story from the book of Joshua. And occasionally, not even intentionally, occasionally he's mentioning the 27 books of the New Testament. So the New Testament, the 27 books, were already agreed on early enough in the 2nd century, not on the 4th. Okay, so that was very, very important, because again, that saying that Constantine in 313 in the Council of Nicaea in 325, this was the time also that they didn't talk about the listing of these books or the mentioning of these books in the Council of Nicaea. Actually, we know what happened in Council of Nicaea because we have a document saying what happened. And that was, they were discussing the divinity of Christ, and they were opposing that kind of the proposal of Arius, denying the divinity of Christ. And that's, by the way, when it came that statement that most of the denominations agreed on, that Jesus was begotten, not created. And by the way, we don't need a list to approve the books. Like, we don't have to have a list because, oh, now it's in the canon, what we call them in the canon, because it's in the list. Even these guys were listing these books, but we don't need a list to say, okay, this is canon and this is not canon. If I live in that time, early enough, I would say, okay, guys, this is the document. You can tell me, how do you know that Matthew was really in Scripture? What do you mean by that? This is the gospel that was handed to us. We don't know anything else other than Matthew. There are mainly 3 criteria that we based on if this is really canon or not. They have to be apostolic, meaning it's written by an apostle or someone knows the apostle, a follower of the apostle. For example, we know that Matthew and John were disciples, but Mark and Luke, they were not. Mark was a follower or a disciple of Peter, and Luke was a disciple of Paul. So the scriptures have to be coming from a disciple or someone knows the disciple. Have to be orthodox. Here I don't mean the denomination, the Orthodox, although we have great respect to them, but it means straight. The doctrine is straight. And they have to be Catholic, meaning that, again, not the denomination, the Catholic, which we have great respect to them, but Catholic mean widely spread over. So they have to be apostolic, Orthodox, Catholic. Then I can say, okay, this document is really coming as a scripture and can be in the canon. So I hope that answers your question, but we have so much of science to examine the documents we have, and by just seeing the manuscripts that tell me if it's authentic or not.
Right.